And with that, I'm really, really excited to welcome the last speaker of the day, Dani Antman. And Dani is joining us from the lovely area of Santa Barbara in California. Welcome, Dani. It's a really a fantastic closing for the kind of day that we've had, because a number of you have touched on the subject that as the Kundalini energy starts to become active in us, a lot of our unprocessed emotions might come to the forefront and do need to get dealt with. And as we do in many of our conferences, and also in the type of support that we offer as ICR, we really do pay particular attention to sharing this kind of context for people that are going through the process. And Dani is going to share with us part of her own personal journey that has led her since 1992 to really be at the forefront of energy healing and transformative processes. Dani did share with me as well that she's been supported in her own Kundalini process over the past 18 years by Patanjali Kundalini Yoga. And for those of us who know her well, Joan Harrigan was one of her teachers before she retired. So we all share in that common connection. Beyond that, Dani's explorations in her Jewish lineage has paralleled her Kundalini process and has led her to study and meditate with Hebrew letters and phrases. So that's, again, this multi-denominational, multi-dimensional approach to things that is just really so common in this journey. And with that, I welcome Dani. Dani, I believe you have some experiential component to your presentation, so I'm going to give you a little nudge earlier so that we have time for questions, but also 10 minutes for your experiential part of that.
I don't think I need a nudge. I think it'll interrupt the exercise. So okay. Just let me know after the exercise, perhaps, how much time.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. And those of you who have been here the whole day, thank you for hanging in there. I was afraid that nobody would be left by the last presentation, but you all have a lot of stamina due to Kundalini, I am sure. A couple of things, thanks to ICR and Paul and Michael. And I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Myrna Filman, who I share. We were both students of both Joan Harrigan and Joan's teacher, whose name was Swami Chandra Shekaranand Saraswati. I'm not going to talk much about my personal journey. It's all in my book, which is called Wired for God, Adventures of a Jewish Yogi. Today, I want to really focus in on emotions because in my work as a spiritual guide and energy healer, which has spanned about 30 years at this point in time and started way before Kundalini interrupted and erupted in my life. The question I'm most often asked by people is, how do I deal with difficult emotions, such as anger and terror and grief and anxiety? I've been told by people in my healing practice, clients, that they have spent their whole lives trying not to feel their emotions. And then they wonder why their body is expressing their feelings through physical problems and disease. Other people have always lived with a deep sense of depression or sadness, and they've told me that they've never actually experienced joy or ebullience or happiness. There can be a fear that if you start to feel the powerful emotions of grief, you'll never be able to stop. And it seems easier in that case than to push grief down. And in the long run, pushing down emotions really doesn't work. And from my perspective as a healer, it's one of the prime reasons people develop health problems. I am going to share a screen. Let's see if I can do that. So I'm going to read this poem I found. The old healer said to the soul, "It's not your back that hurts, but the burden you carry. It's not your eyes that hurt, but the injustice you see. It's not your head that hurts, but your thoughts. It's not your throat, but that which you dare not say. It's not your belly that hurts, but that you can't digest what's happening around you. It's not your liver that hurts, but the anger inside. It's not your heart that hurts, but the love. And it's love itself who can heal all this pain, the most powerful medicine." So like the poem I just read, your belly hurts because of what you can't digest in life. And if you can't digest a painful experience, it shows up as a bellyache or other forms of aches, pains, and illness. In my experience, fibromyalgia, colitis, certain cancers, food allergies, food addiction, bulimia, all conditions that I have noticed are related to unexpressed feelings and emotions or underlying and unhealed traumas. Howard Friedman, a researcher at UC Irvine, has done scientific studies that show that chronic stress lowers your immune system function, and chronic anger or anxiety is linked with double the risk of getting illnesses such as asthma, headaches, ulcers, heart disease, and arthritis. However, we all know that there's always many factors that influence our immune system. And of course, this is really important right now during this COVID epidemic. And we really don't know yet why one person will get sick and another won't when exposed to the same adverse conditions. So one thing that I found is that being able to identify and feel emotions is a portal back to healing and wholeness, and that our emotions are actually these messengers that, when welcomed, can give us feedback about our inner world. They hold the key for us to be able to be responsive, empathetic, and relational. And when we have the ability to feel the full range of our emotions, we then can have more resiliency and freedom in how we choose to act in the world. We won't be as frozen. As I was researching emotions, I found out that emotions are actually a very complex subject, and that scientists who are just beginning to study emotions and study the brain and are creating experiments to demonstrate the connection between our emotions and our health. And this is still actually a new frontier current to our times. So I looked up in Wikipedia, like everybody does, the definition of emotion. And then I have a couple other kind of more radical definitions. The first is an emotion is a positive or a negative experience that's associated with a particular pattern of physiological activity. Emotions produce different physiological, behavioral, and cognitive changes. And the original role of emotion was to encourage our adaptive behaviors that would actually contribute to the survival of our species. But then, in more modern times, Lisa Feldman Barrett, who's been doing a lot of new experiments with emotions and the brain, says an emotion is not a thing, but a category of instances. And any emotion category actually has tremendous variety. And that emotions arise from neurons in the brain, but there are no neurons that are exclusively dedicated to emotion. And no one brain region contains the fingerprint of any single emotion. That's how variable it is physiologically. And then this also new definition from Daniel Brown, PhD, who's a professor at Harvard. An emotion has three necessary components: the felt bodily experience, a cognition or thought, and an expressive reaction. If you just have a bodily sense without the thought, it's not an emotion, because that thought helps distinguish the kind of emotion. And if you just have a thought without a bodily sense, it's not an emotion either. So, next slide. The 6 primary emotions are anger, fear, disgust, surprise, sadness, and happiness. And we also have some sensory motor secondary emotions that, for example, empty and full, which has to do with your sensory apparatus, or expanded and contracted, or tight, or relaxed. And we also have some pre-conscious body feelings that inform our consciousness to set off an emotional reaction. And this is how our limbic system and our nervous system, our automatic nervous system, protects us from danger. So we'll have this pre-conscious thing, and all of a sudden we feel fear. And there's nothing conscious that is telling us that there's something to be afraid of. But then we go on hyper alert and we look for the danger. The next thing I'd like to say is that there are nuances of each of those emotions. And most of us don't have a really great emotional vocabulary. And it's really interesting if you look at some of these nuances or flavors of just the one word happiness. I'm going to name a few really slowly, and just notice that you might even have a sensory body response to the word. For example, and also I would just say these are categorized into soft, medium, and intense. So a soft word, calm. And if you think about calm, you might notice a reaction in your body. Or a medium happiness word, gratified. Gratified might bring up something sensual or sensate in your body. Or an intense happiness word, blissfully ecstatic, like some of you have described in your Kundalini experience. That blissful ecstatic experience, I bet most of you who have had that could recall it in an instant. And it comes with full sensory and perhaps pictorial images of what blissful ecstatic is in your unique brain and nervous system. And then if we switch to, let's see, one second, different flavors of anger, you have something different in your body. And once again, I'm going to name 3 different flavors in the soft, medium, and intense category. And just notice what happens in your own energy system and in your brain and in your body. How about rankled? Rankled, the feeling of being rankled. And then in the next category, the feeling of being incensed. Incensed. Where does that land in your body? Noticing your heart rate might increase there, for instance. And then in the intense category, how about raging? The last time you were raging. Think about that and what it did to your body. And the last time you were raging, how you felt after you were raging. What got stimulated in your body. And if you give that a second, you'll notice that there are sensate and brain associations with each category. So I'm going to show you 2 pictures in a row. And the first picture, I'd like you silently, or if you want, I can't see the chat at the moment, so that's not going to help. Silently decide what emotion this picture of a person is displaying. What do you see in her face, and what emotion would you name that as? Maybe you have one or two, maybe you can't decide, but what do you see? And now I'm going to show you the next slide, and tell me what you see now. And does that contrast with what you just saw previously? I wonder how I can get back to the chat. 1 second. I wonder if any of you were surprised. I'm having trouble getting back to the chat, but I'm sure that the first picture might have said something different than the second picture to you. So we learn to interpret emotions through our early parent-child relationships, and primarily through our facial expressions. And therefore, we all perceive emotions differently by reading people's faces and their body language. There are studies, let me go to the next one. There are studies that have shown that people who can distinguish between shades of emotion have less extreme emotional reactions. So that means that the bigger your emotional range is, the more facility you will have in metabolizing emotions in your life. And those same studies have shown that those people are less likely to drink excessively when stressed, and less likely to retaliate aggressively against someone who has hurt them. People who can't distinguish between shades of emotion have more experiences with depressive disorders and social anxiety, eating disorders, autism, and even borderline personality disorder. It's also been shown that when you cultivate positive emotional states and their associated sensations, it helps your brain to construct positive experiences in the future. So when we have a positive state that we cultivate over a period of time, your brain is laying down new tracks to have positive experiences in the future. I am an energy healer, and many years ago studied with Barbara Brennan, who wrote the book Hands of Light. And I just wanted to show this because everybody here has been talking about the subtle body and Kundalini. In this diagram, there are 7 levels of the subtle energy field or aura. And I have filled in this second level here. And this second level is considered the emotional level of the field, of the auric field. And it's associated with the second chakra. And according to Joan Harrigan and Kundalini Vidya, that's her book, the emotional level, the second chakra is actually the chakra that helps the vitality of the whole auric field. It's associated with the genitals, creativity, and sexuality. So when the second chakra is disturbed, the whole energy field is disturbed. When the second chakra is disturbed, the whole energy field is disturbed. And it can affect nerves, movement, joints, circulation, and muscles. And I know I'm not alone as a person who has not had ideal emotional or sexual relationships. And I found out personally when I was working with Kundalini that my own second chakra needed a lot of repair. And when our sexual relationships aren't ideal or of the nourishing kind, and there's ensuing heartbreak, this can cause damage not only to the heart chakra, but the first, second, and third chakras. And it weakens your whole energy system. So one of the reasons for the recommendation of restraint in the tantric practices, like you were talking about, Francis, is that when we abuse sexual practices, or we're not honoring our boundaries, or when we've been abused, the whole vitality of our energy system is affected. And then Kundalini process can get very disruptive, and it won't be able to progress further. Next slide. This again is from Barbara Brennan's book, Hands of Light. This is what somebody with a healthy emotional flow would look like. There would be nice colors running through your emotional level of your field, and they tend to be bright and pretty colors. And then when we're having an emotional reaction that's pretty intense, the colors tend to concentrate and get darker, and sometimes downright dark. And like if you were to watch somebody who's extremely angry and rageful, and if you could photograph this level of their field, you would probably see a lot of dark colors around their head and their heart, and maybe their belly center, depending on how they run emotions in their body. In an ideal world, the emotions are related to the flow of water and the water element, and each of us would be able to have a natural flow of emotion. However, most of us don't have that experience, and we find ourselves bottling up emotions until they're about ready to explode, and then we feel shattered and broken. So when we explode with emotion, we're also actually damaging our energy field to some extent. If it's chronic explosion, chronic negative emotion, you are permanently damaging your energy field until you turn inwards towards healing. My teacher, Barbara Brennan, and this is back in 1988, she wrote Hands of Light, I think was one of the first people to share and see clairvoyantly how blocked emotions and energy and negative thoughts produce stagnation in the energy field, and then that results in disease. And she really promoted the fact that we have to look at not just our emotions, but the belief system that is associated with our emotions. And in that way, the thoughts and the emotions heal together, and they affect our energy field. And then disease process does not start, and we'd have more health and wholeness. But that process is not eagerly approached by a lot of people. And I have found people need a lot of coaching and hand-holding to go towards things in their life that they've wanted to shut down forever. And, you know, I've worked with people who are 70 years old and older who have said, nope, I don't want to touch that. I'm not going there. So it's really up to us to do that inner work. As we awaken, anything not aligned with unitive consciousness will come up to be healed. And they come up in our body, as someone else mentioned, I think it was Francis, as kriyas, which in Sanskrit means a movement of energy. And they happen when Kundalini process is active. And I define Kundalini Shakti slightly different from a couple of other people based on Patanjali Kundalini Yogacare's definition, which is that she's the divine feminine force of awakening, more akin to the luminous light within, but not synonymous with energy. She uses prana or energy to clear your auric field and chakras, but really it's the God force within every person that uses the pranic channels, the nadis and the chakras to elevate her process in your body so that it's a fit vehicle for awakening. So in my work as a healer, I've done extensive studies in trauma resolution and healing, and somatic experiencing. The work of Peter Levine has been one of my many trainings. And one of my teachers, Raja Selvam, has said that emotion is the impact of a situation on the body. And if you can distribute it in the body, you'll have more ease, less stress, more capacity, more life force. And this has been true in my experience. So I wanted to do a short somatic exercise with you that will allow you to have an experience of how two different emotions feel in your body, and how to use your body as a physical container for first a pleasant emotion and then a more challenging emotion. And one of the main principles of trauma healing and somatic experiencing is that we want to be able to unfreeze our nervous system. And we do that when we have the ability to oscillate between complementary things or opposing things without getting fixated on one side. And we're going to use this principle in this short exercise. So I would just ask you to take a moment and, make yourself comfortable and take a breath. It's been a long day. And I also want to say that if any part of this feels threatening, please don't do it. It's not meant to heal your deepest emotion in this 10-minute exercise, because the Zoom is not the place for that. So just feel your feet on the floor if you can. And we'll start with just a short grounding so that we're grounded when we do this. And bring your energy and attention down to your feet, your toes, and the heels and balls of each foot. And in the center of each of your feet, there's a little chakra right in the arch. And just imagine that little whirling open vortex as a channel of energy that can open downward into the energy of the earth. Feeling the earth's magnetic field and the sense of gravity. And just allow yourself to feel anchored and supported by the awareness of the earth below you. Feeling the vibration of the earth supporting you and giving you a sense of grounding. And now I'm going to ask you to recall a time when you felt deeply, deeply happy and centered and at ease in your life. A specific time. Perhaps a favorite place in nature or doing something you love. And allow this memory to become fully sensory. Feel it in your body. Where do you feel it in your body, and does it have a size or a shape? Let the sense of this pleasure in your body expand and take up more room. Notice what happens to your breath, your heart rate, and maybe any other physical sensations associated with this memory. And then shifting gears, I'm now going to ask you to recall a time when you had a really negative emotional reaction to someone in your life. You can picture that person, but stay connected to your reaction and your body. And notice the feeling that comes up in your body. Where do you feel it in your body, and does it have a size or shape? Can you identify the emotion associated with this incident in person? Can you name it as anger, fear, shame, disgust? Can you name it? If you wish, you can place your hand on your body where you most feel this emotion and invite it, welcome it actually to take up more space in your body and spread it out, either upwards, downwards, or to the sides. Allowing yourself to invite it in and stay with it rather than push it away. And then to end this short practice, place a hand on your heart and just invite in self-compassion for yourself for having this emotion instead of judging it. Self-compassion and love for yourself. You're human, you have feelings, and feelings of this nature are allowed. And they're part of the full range of your capacity for emotional expression. And just give yourself some love. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes and come back. So although that was short, I do imagine people felt some things. And I would actually like to open a little discussion rather than Q&A about what you might have felt as the difference between the two in your body. And you can unmute yourself and just share if you wish, or put something in the chat. And now I can see you guys, so hi, familiar faces. Would anybody share what the difference was between in their body, between happiness, between feeling at ease and good, and the second with somebody you were irritated with or angry with or whatever it was for you? We have some time. You can just shout out so I can see you. Hi, Francie.
Hi. When I'm in bliss, I'm in total bliss, because my favorite place is swimming in the lake. And feel it's a total body sensation because the water's passing all over every bit of me, and I'm just almost unconscious in the bliss. And I've also, when we move on to the second exercise, I've been confronted very recently by someone who disturbs me. And it's not a normal thing. It's been many years since I've been disturbed by anybody at all. but certain beings, I call it an interference pattern, which I have been unable to retain my bliss, my normal state of bliss. So you bringing this person into my life just now, the feeling where I feel her and what I feel, that's a contraction. The first energy is a total expansion into bliss, and the second energy is contraction.
Yeah, contraction.
Yeah, total contraction.
And when you stayed with the contraction itself, did anything shift a teeny bit?
Well, yeah, because I recognize it as a contraction, and I thought, well, I'm not having that. I'm not allowing this contraction to happen into my body. So I have to incorporate contraction and let it spread all through my body as well, and join the expansion. And hopefully, maybe in that little 5 minutes exercise, maybe something shifted.
What I've noticed is that after every expansion into bliss, there's usually some form of contraction. And I have had to ride the wave of that. And in between expansion and contraction, there's often stillness. So when I have the ability to welcome the contraction, the stillness happens, and then the next wave of bliss has actually more space in my being because I've ridden the wave. It's one of the main
waves out of the contraction.
Yeah. And just a word about the irritating person. So we're on our path of bliss and light, and of course something comes into our life like, you know, to irritate us, because it's how we grow. It just is endless. It's just endless. You know, we think we're beyond it, and we are not.
No, exactly. It's just to remind you, you know, you're still here, you're still learning, there's still so much to learn. And
Yeah.
there's not that much time to be irritated, really, so just get over it and let it go.
Should I ask for more sharing, or are there questions?
And Dani, we do have one question that was actually posed prior to the exercise, so maybe we can have Vitold read that to us.
Yes, Dani, if it's okay to do this, I didn't want to interrupt you, but I got a question from Neil, and he wanted to know, does obscenity release the emotions?
Interesting question. I would imagine it can. It releases it from the person and projects it onto whoever who's listening. And I think what I'm offering is a way to not project, but to alchemically process this. Now, this was just a short, teeny example, but we all need a way to alchemically eat the poison of our own emotions. And the body is the key, and the sensate body is the key. And then I find the stories around all our emotions end up taking care of themselves once we're not projecting. You know, if you've ever had an angry fight with somebody, it's almost all projection, because nobody's metabolizing their own feelings, right? And they start blaming, and it goes like this. This is about metabolizing intense feelings. Sabine, how much time? Any? No.
Well, we're about 7 minutes over, so
Okay,
you know.
we're done. Can I just show one quick slide about resources if anybody wants them? Do it really quickly. Hold on, I'm just doing share, and I'm going to go to my last picture. If anybody wants more info, my book, the books I quoted, and the current head of PKYC, who's reachable in Austria. I don't know how you save this, but if you want to give people a second, if that's of interest.
Yeah, everyone can take a note of that. And I do see one hand raised, and I can't see you, Eugenie, when you raised your hand, but since you did, if you wanted to share.
Navigated away from the video.
We can hear you.
Yes, just to say, Dani, I so resonate with everything you're saying, because without even realizing it, many years ago on a yoga retreat, when I couldn't sleep, I realized it's the awful sensations in the body that are keeping me awake. And if I just keep going back to those sensations, and I fell asleep. And my kind of mantra is, what are these thoughts? What sensations are these thoughts trying to rescue me away from? And I often notice that just before my awareness becomes conscious of some sharp cutting pain in my head or whatever, there's a whole flotsam and jetsam of thoughts that I feel I've no control over. And then I think, there it is, the sensation in my head, anger or whatever. And once I get to the actual sensation, I've been practicing this for years now, lying awake, practicing this. Once I get to the actual sensation and can stay with it, and of course the Kundalini is working away beautifully. Oh my God, the going beyond that then, as exactly as you said, overcoming that then is the sense of, now I go to a wider horizon. So
I could have said it better. Thank you.
thank you.
I don't want to hold up Sabine's meeting, the next general meeting of ICR, right? The annual meeting.
Well, thank you, Dani, again for all the speakers. You know, if we were in the tent, we would give a rousing round of applause, but it's a little more challenging to do it globally. So thank you for your wonderful presentation and for actually closing the day with a little bit of an exercise to take us through to really show us what it feels like. That's a wonderful way to close this amazing day. You know, we have put a lot into these past 5 hours, and I hope that everyone will take some time and allow things to process and touch back on the various presentations. I always love it when Paul starts off our day. He has such a grounding way of describing Kundalini and the process, and also what ICR as a I don't like calling us an institution, but we're just a group of people with a cause that's very dear to our hearts. But really just what we are trying to do, which is exactly this, the sharing of information, the sharing and exchanging of experiences, and of making some support material available. And of course, the ever present quest that at some point in time research will and science will be able to measure and understand this process a little bit better. So thank you to Terry, thank you to Archana and to Anne, thank you to Francis and Neil, our honorary male participant today. And thank you to Dani for closing the day. I like Francis's words very simply. I will just leave you with lots of light, love, and laughter. May that guide you through the year, and hopefully we will see you all again next year. Mike Bradford is going to send out by email some of the presentations. I think once a week he's going to send out an email link to the YouTube presentation of the various speakers, so you can see that again. But thank you very much. Thank you for your presence. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being with us and sharing your energy with us. And hopefully we'll see some of you at the AGM. And hopefully we will see many of you at the live meeting in person next year, where we would all stand in a circle now and hug each other and wish each other farewell. So we will do it virtually, right? Thank you, everybody.